very recently, I'm a product manager at Facebook in augmented reality. I am honored to be hosting this panel. We have 4 leaders discussing technology trends for the next 10 years. I'm sure it will be nothing short of exciting. Just some housekeeping before we get started. We have 45 minutes of conversation and we'll leave the last 15 minutes for Q&A. So I think everyone will be muted during the panel, but please type your questions at the bottom of Zoom in the chat bot, and George will be reading all the questions and will be moderating the last 15 minutes. Yeah, so that being said, I think we can get started with our panel. I'd love for each one of you to take a few minutes to introduce yourselves. I will also add a question that I stole from one podcast I love called Skimmed on the Couch. What is one aspect of your career that we cannot find on your resume? So, Nora.
Great, thank you, and welcome everyone. Let's see, 2 minutes or less on your introduction. So I'm Nora Denzel. It's pronounced like Denzel Washington, but no relationship yet. And then I've been in tech more than many of you have been alive. So I have a computer science degree in 1984, started in software, and my specialty was in computer storage. Some of you might recognize me. I've been on the cover of Computer Storage magazine. I was at IBM for a number of years. Then I went to a startup. Then I ran some divisions at HP in networking and storage and in consulting. Then I went to a consumer play called Intuit that does QuickBooks, Quicken, Mint, TurboTax. And now I sit on company boards. So I'm on the board of Ericsson, on AMD, a big data play, which is called Talend, and finally NortonLifeLock. Let's see, what's not on my resume? I'll tell you this. I grew up on a farm, and so my formative years, I learned a lot about animal husbandry. And so I have skills in that if any of you should need it. And I also have that as my fallback plan if my tech career doesn't work out. Back to you, Hind. That's what I don't brag about.
I think it's probably safe to say you don't necessarily need that fallback plan, but it's good for us to have that in mind.
I don't know, but with the shelter in place, animal husbandry, has come in handy. We'll just leave it there.
Thank you. Fadwa, can you go next?
Sure. Fadwa Mohanna, CEO of 137 Solutions. My background has been in computer engineering and telecom engineering. Started my professional career in '96, lived around the world installing the first GSM networks in at least 6 countries. Finally, in 2010, I decided to leave the corporate world and start my own venture. And it took a number of iterations, as we say. The ultimate and where we really found our mission and our core expertise is in digital identity that I will be talking about today. Very passionate about everything tech. And the part that you wouldn't find on any CV would be the unglamorous part of starting a company and everything, somebody goes through when going and establishing a company and pitching it to clients and going through the ups and downs and everything in the journey that looks like an instant success, and those 5-6 years before of suffering that nobody talks about. So this is that. I don't think that you will find that, but this has been a magnificent journey, and I'm so happy to share it with you today.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I'm very familiar with the unglamorous years. Mine includes sleeping at a factory floor in China for a year.
Totally
understand. Thank you. Mary?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for including me here. I feel very privileged to be an adopted Lebanese for one afternoon. So thank you very much. The epitome of inclusion, so I love it. So I'm a mechanical engineer by profession, and then I crossed to the dark side and went over into IT very early on, before we even coined a business analyst, or a system analyst. I worked for Bell Canada and then came over to Chicago with Motorola, and then was a CIO since the age of 35, and I now just celebrated my 55th birthday, so 20 years as a CIO.
Congratulations.
Birthday.
Yeah.
And so it feels a long time. I'm feeling very old. But having said that, I am now with Qualcomm, been there for almost 5 years now. Excited to be here today. There is a lot going on in tech. So we have a lot of things that we can touch on. Very excited time. What you won't hear about me on my resume is actually when I was in college in McGill University in Montreal. I played on the college women's ice hockey team.
Oh, wow.
So way back when, in 1980 something, graduated in 88. So 1987, 88, I played college hockey. So given that this is the ice hockey playoffs right now, that's a big love of my life. So that's what you'll find about me.
Cool, thank you. Lina? Oh, you might be on mute.
Thanks for having me. So I guess you're calling in from Lebanon. It's very late here. So just to introduce myself, I'm currently the Dean of Engineering at the Lebanese American University. I also hold an Emerita Professor position at Arizona State University. I've been involved, I love working with industry, so I've been involved in a lot of industry initiative, working on projects. So I believe that things shouldn't stay in the lab, but should really be technology. We should have technology transferred to impact society, even when we do things in academia. So that's why I usually worked on different initiatives with different companies and industry. That said, something that's not on my resume, when I was even like here during my undergrad and also graduate school, I used to like also to write songs. So I went when I moved to the US, I said I have to copyright that. So I have a copyrighted song collection in the Library of Congress. However, now I know, before I believed I want this, these songs are really good, but now after, I don't really think so anymore. So let me tell you that. However, I had that passion and I don't think I can fall back on that, however, when I retire.
Oh, wow. Maybe we can get the singing performance of the song, or is that too much to ask?
Songwriting, not singing.
Okay, fine. Fair. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Lina, for making it so late. We are here to discuss your point of view of the technology trends for the next 10 years. So I'd love for each of you to go and give us your point of view on what's in really exciting technology trends that you've been involved with or that you're seeing and that you think would be a ruling feature of our next 10 years. So Nora, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, well, the one that I picked is 5G. And I want to talk about it, and I'm going to try not to use fancy technical words that engineers are prone to do because I figured our audience is mixed today of people in the industry and people not. So 5G, I'm just going to talk about three things. What is it? What's different about it? And give you some examples of why I find it so exciting. So what is it? It's just the next generation of wireless technology. So we've already been through this. We had 1G and 2G that gave us voice and text. 3G, so every 10 years we get a new one. So 2000, we got 3G, so we got Facebook came with that, media, music. It was only 10 years ago we got 4G. Now we can't even imagine our life without it. So that ushered in the sharing economy, Uber, Waze, Pokemon Go. We couldn't have done that with 3G. So now, 2020, we're getting introduced to 5G. And you'll hear words like smart cities, Internet of Skills, the industrial Internet of Things. And then my favorite is nobody knows. Nobody knows what 5G is really going to bring, because when 4G came, everybody was trying to predict, and I'll tell you, no one predicted Uber, Airbnb, Waze, etc. So what's different from 5G from 4G? So if you're a consumer, what they're selling you, and you see it every minute online, is speed, speed, speed. So it's up to 100 times faster than 4G. And so that's interesting. So you can download the whole series of Game of Thrones in a couple of minutes rather than a couple of hours. And so most people think, oh, wow, I just want I want it faster. But that's not the whole story of 5G. There's two other things. First is, the fancy word is called latency, but normal people would say something like reaction time. How fast can this network go if you do a action to a reaction? So think of it as I flash up a picture of a cat. How fast can your brain understand it's a cat and say the word cat? So in humans, that's 8 milliseconds. You don't think about it, but it's near real time how fast that goes. Well, 5G approaches that type of speed. And that's what's so different about 5G from 4G. 4G, in technical terms, is 100 milliseconds delay. And all it means is I can tell. As a human, when something's delayed, you can tell. So for example, if I'm shooting a zombie in a game, or there's a live feed at a sports venue, it's delayed a little bit. And as a human, I'm like, I can tell. I don't know it's 100 milliseconds. I don't know if it's 1 millisecond, but I can tell. With 5G, you can't tell. Meaning if you're doing anything robotic, if you're doing anything remotely, it's as if you were there touching that object right there. So that is a huge difference. The near human response time, it's approaching how fast your brain can work. And the third thing is it allows for so much more connectivity of everything. So we can do that today, but 5G with the protocols really lets hundreds of thousands of things be connected seamlessly. So let me just give you some examples, because 5G is called an enabling technology, meaning that it's going to enable other things. So here's 3 examples that people think will be part of your lives within the next 10 years. First of all, they call it venue experience. And what that means is you can put cameras around, if we ever get together again, a whole football stadium or a concert. And you, with your phone, could be able to see any camera feed in real time that you want to see. So for me, maybe I bought the cheap seats and I'm way up in the bleacher, but I want to see the quarterback's view of the football game. Or maybe I want to see the lead guitarist's view when they're playing. I want to see what the musician sees from the stage. And so I would never have a backstage pass, but in real time, there'll be no delay and you won't see that. We hear a lot about smart cities. So when those are wired up and there's sensors everywhere, cars will be able to communicate with my bike and with the stop sign and be able to say, wait a second, that car is going too fast. You need to stop now because they're going to hit you. And with near human-like response time, that can actually happen and improve safety. And we don't have anything like that today. I mean, you have things, they come in late, and we would never bet our lives on our technology and on the latency. Other examples I've seen is medicine. You could do an operation. The best heart surgeon in the world could be in New York City, you could be in San Francisco, and they could be operating on you remotely, again, because of this fast response time. And so that's why they call it the Internet of Skills. The skills can be over here, the physical objects can be over there, and through 5G enablement, you're able to manipulate those objects. So I'll stop there, but I will say, if you're just listening to the hype, and it's in the hype cycle right now from the carriers, from AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, it's all about speed and everyone says that they have it. And later we'll talk about how does it roll out, what are the barriers and things like that. But 5G in summary is faster, can connect more, and is near human speed. And I think it will change how we live, how we play, and how we work for decades to come. There you go, Hind.
And I imagine COVID has only enabled the acceleration of the trend.
You're absolutely right.
I would like to break the order and jump to Mary, because I know that you've also given multiple presentations around 5G, and I know you were aiming at discussing it from a different angle. So could you give us your perspective on the tech trend for the next 10 years? You're on mute, Mary. Sorry. Oh, maybe Fadwa, you'd like to go while Mary unmutes.
Yes, sure. So the tech trend that I wanted to discuss with you today is all around a very controversial issue. Mary, would you like to go and continue with 5G?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry about that. I went on mute. Nora, that was a great explanation of 5G from a consumer's perspective. I really couldn't not say 5G, something about 5G, given we're making it happen at Qualcomm. We're a big part of making it all happen and bringing it to life and making it real. To your point, it is a technology discovery, but we haven't even yet seen all the applications of this amazing capability, which encompasses everything that you said. One area, given that we're in the pandemic, there's a couple of things. Number one, I think the aspect of a lot of us working from home right now, pivoting, being in the office, and then being able to pivot quickly and work remotely from anywhere has really enabled companies during these interesting times. And connectivity makes that all happen. But where the 5G, a use case that I saw recently that I thought was so powerful, it touched my heart, was in the area of a company called Vista in Florida, Florida in the United States, is giving hospice services. And what they did for the patients in the hospice service is they put an XR glasses over the eyes of the patient. Now, these patients are in chronic pain, right? They're in their last days, trying to give them as much comfort as possible. What they did is they had this man who couldn't even tolerate the wind on his skin, couldn't tolerate anything touching him. So rather than putting XR glasses on him, the IT technicians held the glasses up to his eyes and they brought him on a walk through the redwood forest in California. When they did that, his pain level went from a 9 to a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10. What he was able to do then was hold the hands of his loved ones for the first time in weeks. So just totally the power of the technology, right? Technology enablement, that's great, but it means nothing if it doesn't bring a human experience along with it. And I think during these times and these interesting times, I just thought it was a very interesting use case where we've seen technology come to life. In terms of what's going to happen over the next 10 years, I think things are going to change faster than we can ever imagine. And so the adoption of these new capabilities are going to be put to practice. But all sorts of great stuff happening there. Fadwa, I'll pass it off to you, as I know we have limited time.
Sure. Thank you, Mary. I wanted also to talk about another one of those very, very, moving and faster changes are coming to the digital identity sector. And I wanted to share with you today one specific technology that has been completely revolutionizing the whole digital identity, which is SSI, Self-Sovereign Identity. And the reason digital identity remains a very controversial topic is because it's somewhere between two extremes, which are convenience and privacy. So if you want to have a very convenient experience today, for example, you go and log in with Facebook and Twitter and all those things, and you get a convenient service, you get faster access to some service at the price of sharing all your data with whoever you used to log in with. So there is a price to convenience. The other extreme is privacy and security. So it's like you don't share anything with anybody, you don't go online, basically you stick to everything paper, and you don't want to be connected to the digital world. So There are two extremes today, and people tend, to choose one or another. And there was no technical solution that could give you both, that would sit in the middle, give you privacy, yet give you convenience. And SSI emerged in the last 2 years, and specifically in 2019, as the solution for answering both of these dilemmas. And actually, maybe we want to say thank you, COVID. Maybe one of the things that COVID did right was the acceleration of all these digital transformations, especially in the realm of digital identity. Because during the closure of most of the government, you could not have a single paper from the government. You could not have a passport, not that you needed it, but you couldn't have it even if you wanted it. You couldn't have a driving license. You couldn't have a birth certificate if you had a baby born in a hospital during the first month of COVID. A lot of these agencies just shut down. And everybody starts saying, well, now we have to think that this might happen again. And we need another way of issuing all those credentials, what we call, the human identity credentials. So how can I issue all your documents from the issuers, what we call the list of issuers, which could be government, private, public sector, to you with the holder in the SSI terms. The holder becomes the sole owner of the credentials. So all those digital credentials would be sent to you and would sit in your digital wallet, which is on your phone. And you become the sole custodian of your data. You are the sole owner, you are the king of your kingdom, and you are the one chooses to share the credentials with the third party, which is the verifiers or service providers. So for example, I can choose to send my digital passport with my credit card to a visa section to get a visa somewhere. I can choose to send my digital driving license with a credit card to rent a car from a car agency. So all of those changes are coming very fast. We are working on a number of these programs and POCs right now. And the SSI is definitely one of those tech that will revolutionize everything we're doing in the realm of identity. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Lina, to you, I guess.
Okay.
Lina, you're on mute.
Yes, so just like we're talking about 5G, smart cities, digital identity, all these topics. And I guess AI is at the heart of many things and many applications. For example, if we take 5G, you have all these data coming with no latency. And with all the data, with all these interconnected things, multimodal data, we need really more advances in AI to be able to mine this data. I mean, just now, if we talk about all this data, for example, if you take only video, and now with 5G, we're going to see more video. Currently, video, according to a Cisco white paper, is about more than 80% of the IP traffic video. And, in that white paper, they say that it would take 5 million years for a human to be able just to see if the video that's in the internet for a month, that the video that's being streamed or being uploaded, single months of video would take us 5 million years to watch. That's why we need AI to be able to mine through data. Now add all this data that's going to be enabled through this Internet of Things, all these different devices that are connected due to 5G. We need more and more AI to help us make sense of all this data. And if you talk about gaming and to be able to do that in real time with low latency, we will need to work on advanced solution and to have online learning solutions that can learn and adapt in real time and fast if we have now lower latency. So you need faster learning. So these are challenges and some trends that we need to work on. Now that said, with the current pandemic, since we talked about COVID, AI is becoming more and more important for health because we're collecting also maybe data from patients remotely. We have all this data, how we can also do faster drug discovery. AI is being used for that, but this is going to become more and more important, especially also with being remote and during the pandemic, how we can do monitoring, I mean, more intelligent patient-centered monitoring and diagnosis. So sensing is important, sensors, and also AI technologies that can work on, the patient-centered technologies for monitoring, diagnosis, and, because especially now more and more, we need these technologies to improve lives of people in different regions. Especially more and more now, people are moving into rural areas with the pandemic. They don't want to stay in the cities anymore. So they're moving farther. So we need to work on such technologies more and more. And that said, this brings also AI-based assistive technologies. These are going to become more and more important, especially if we want to have more contactless. For example, I would mention the Amazon Go, for example, where you go shopping, you don't have anybody in the store now, and you could just pick an item, and using computer vision, immediately it gets charged to your phone. They know which item you picked. This is going to reduce lines in the airport, for example. Just you pick the item without anybody, any cashier. So this is based on computer vision, also machine learning, AI, and we're going to see more and more of this trend, I believe, with these technology that it doesn't need other humans to serve you. So this is going to be, some more work on that, like also self-driving cars and automated transportation. Even AI can help improve food production and distribution. For example, we see AI-based now precision agriculture. For sustainable precision agriculture, you have AI solutions, and also optimized transportation of food and goods and services. Not only that, I'm thinking now we do a lot of shopping online. So what about AI-based fashion and design for people? I mean, immediately based on your characteristic, they can suggest things to you, what to wear, so these are the digital assistant, AI-based. Again, also education. We're doing a lot of online education remotely. If you can have moving from a 2D screen now to have an immersive 3D environment, or also you can have educational bots instead of having just online screen. Also AI-based educational tool, plus augmented by AR, VR, and immersion. Instead of 2D flat screens, we move into a more 3D environment for us. Now, that said, I would like to mention some issues, with AI, because especially if you want to work on new solutions rather than using AI as black boxes, definitely there are a lot of open source solutions now we know out there that people can use. But if you want to work on advancing that, you need the expertise, you need to know the fundamentals in addition to the hands-on. And more companies are having issues hiring trained people with the right expertise. So you have the issue of workforce development and retraining in that field. In addition, also companies have issues with IP because people are filing IP left and right on AI things. So you want to make sure the issues of not having to license things from other companies. So I believe because of that, cloud-based platforms are also a very important trend that people are going to more use. Because with cloud-based platform, instead of having, it's expensive and very costly to be hiring these experts people to provide you solutions. And also because of IP, you can pay a fee. So this would enable even small businesses to pay a fee to a cloud-based service where you have the AI solutions or they develop for you. Plus, in terms of robotics and assisted technology, this is going to also to make this technology cheaper, because now it's very costly and it's not going to scale. But when you move to cloud-based platform, the brain, the AI brain or the robot brain or the technology brain can be in the cloud, and you just have to buy the peripherals and the sensor. And the brain is the most expensive part in terms of computation, learning. So by using the cloud, you can make the technology more scalable so consumers can afford it. Like even the diagnosis and the patient-centered diagnosis tool, these can be expensive unless you use the cloud platform. So all of these can provide a solution solutions that are scalable.
Thank you very much. That was a very complete overview, all of you. And it's a great segue into my next question, which is, what are the challenges we foresee for the implementation of these tech trends, but as well, what will we compromise in terms of human experience? I know all of you discussed on how these technologies will enable and enhance our experiences, but also as any new trend, there is maybe something we would be losing as part of our human experience. So I'd love for you, for each one of you to also give us that overview of what are the hurdles for the next 10 years and how do we expect us humans to be living in the next 10 years? Um, Mary, you want to start? Since I've seen you nod at my question. Sorry, you're on mute.
And sorry about that. Gosh, that mute button keeps sticking in there. That's quite a question. Putting forward the time. There was a comment in the chat about legislation, and without a doubt, all new discoveries, all new technologies, all new capabilities, the legislation always lags. I've never seen the legislation lead. So if you think about the Uber business model, right? There's cities and there's countries that are catching up with that, and now that they're putting in more controls on the Uber business model, not as, you know, just because we can, maybe we shouldn't. I think back to even Facebook, right? When Facebook got launched, would it ever have launched if we had known the power that it has today and the way it launched, right? You can't put the air back in the balloon. So then the legislation follows and then figures out how best to put it in, implement the proper legislation so we at least don't hurt ourselves. And I think that that's what's going to happen going forward in terms of this connectivity and the devices is there's a lot of ethical issues that have to be addressed prior to the implementation or along with these deployments. Automated cars is a great one, right? Autonomous cars. You know, in one country, do you swerve and avoid the animal in the road and therefore maybe increase the risk of hitting the person on the sidewalk? Or do you ignore the animal in the road and keep going down and stay away from the person on the sidewalk? There's so many ethical dilemmas when you're implementing and applying that technology, when you're really putting the brain into the technology. I think there's a lot of caution to be done there. Having said that, you have to have, it's a good problem to solve, right? Leading with capability, ensuring that we have the capability, and then exploring the ultimate use of that capability is important. That stage happens first and foremost. And then when we do deployment, then integrating in and understanding how the implications are to the everyday person. I think that's the most important. With respect to just going back real simple, example that I live with every day, mobilizing 40,000 Qualcomm employee and contractors all over the world. You know, we're never going to go back to the old way that business was working and business was designed. So back to the office, we're at the office right now. We're in the office right now. So we have to understand why we want areas of community, right? Physical community, proximity to people. Why do we go back in? What are we doing when we go back in? The other area that I think is just incredibly powerful is along the lines of inclusivity. You know, this sounds a little bit crazy, but enabling this experience over an interface such as this one, like a Zoom call, that actually is amazing for inclusivity, because as long as you have this equipment, then you can reach so many people in so many different areas and everybody participating in the meeting. There's no advantage for those of the people sitting in the room and those people listening in on an audio bridge versus those that are accessible to a video bridge. If everybody's accessing the meeting or the room in the same fashion through this platform, what we've seen at Qualcomm, it's an amazing thing for inclusion. You know, you don't go, oh, I forgot to dial in the number. Oh, I forgot to include this. Oh, I forgot to send out that material. Everybody is experiencing the conversation in that same forum everywhere at the same time all over the world. And it is quite powerful. I think it's had amazing positive effects on our community, on our Qualcomm community.
I couldn't agree more. I've joined Facebook during the pandemic, And so it was my very first experience working at a very large company. And I will say that there is this sense of inclusion that comes with everything being digital. But I will argue that there is the hallway side chatter that I don't get to experience. And some things do get lost in translation during those moments. And so I wonder, how will we adapt in this new digitization trend to enable these side chatters and conversations and enhance our communication?
I think you mentioned a key word there. How do we adapt? Because it's those people that do adapt and figure out how to make it work that are going to be most successful, right? You won't be left behind. So I think there's a tendency that people like to go back to yesterday, but I don't think yesterday will ever come back. So let's figure out what is working in this current situation and figure out what we can do to augment that when we go into a different world or a different situation. I think adaptation, the ability to adapt is a critical element.
Yeah, and I will say it differs largely between being a small company, medium company, or a large company. And that's my segue to you, Fadwa. We've discussed how you've always been a digital first CEO entrepreneur. And so COVID hasn't really changed much in terms of your dynamic, but you've seen different challenges. So I'd love for you to talk about those.
Yeah, so because the team is actually located around the world, we've always worked like people started working like in COVID, but this was our modus operandi for the last at least 5 years. So COVID in a way just accelerated the whole digital transformation, the whole digital identity adoption. Everything went actually so fast. And maybe it's as Mary was saying, I mean, we have been through so much over the last 6 months. It's 10 years worth of digital transformation that have been compacted into 6 months. So we need, at the end of this experiment that the whole humanity has gone into, we need to pick up what are the things that we want to keep for the next 10 years. So working remotely for the whole team, I mean, I don't see anybody from the team. I mean, like this has been the way for the last 5 years. It's not that we need to sit in a room and, you know, around the table and pay a very expensive rent maybe for the office and everything. So all of these things were maybe become now much more adopted, and maybe, yes, we should keep them. Let people live wherever they want to live and pay, you know, good prices for their houses. No need for them to live in the, you know, downtown and the city centers and all of this. So yes, we will keep a lot of those. A lot of the technology trends you're talking about, I mean, AR, VR, AI, everything will go on a much faster scale. There is huge things happening as we speak in these areas, because it has been allowed to be tested at such a massive scale. I mean, the whole humanity now is doing what, you know, talking and doing what we're doing right now. So this is a huge experiment. So yes, let's keep whatever has worked and disregard whatever did not work. But yes, it's been work as usual for us.
So what are the challenges when it comes to SSI?
So two challenges I think will be very clear to us. One of them is legislation. Of course, Mary has touched upon, Nora as well. I mean, digital identity is always going to be a very, very difficult topic. It needs to be talked about in Congress and in, you know, parliaments and politicians, and everybody needs to touch upon digital identity, because government thinks they own your identity and the person thinks they own their identity, and everybody thinks own your part of your, Facebook owns part of your identity, LinkedIn, everybody owns a part of your identity. So legislation will be huge. And the second one will be human adoption. So you will find a lot of people who will still like to have their physical passport in their hand and their digital driving license in their hand, rather than having the digital equivalent sitting in their phone. Because I might lose my phone, I might, you know, run out of battery, all of these problems. What do I do then? So we are going to have, you know, human adoption scenarios moving forward, and people above certain age will not adopt certain technologies, and there is certain people that we need to retrain, and certain people are jumping on this technology. So it's just all about any digital app coming, which is human adoption. This is not a secret.
Nora, would love to hear your thoughts. Mute, unmute. We should automate the unmute.
That was
in
good
our
because
next
I cleared my throat anyway. We should do that.
Yeah.
You know, that really disheartening. So I get so excited about technology, like all of you, because we've been in it so long. Some of you less time than others of us, but there's the digital divide with everything we just talked about only gets bigger. And that's the part that I think those of us in technology need to take the lead on, to not let that happen. And actually there was a question in the chat saying, when there's more women in technology, or more women, or maybe we equalize the number of women who create technology and mirror those that use it, I think that when we add more women in, some of the social issues will be addressed, and the quality of life for women around the world will increase because we'd have such a diverse view. So heretofore, most things were created by a largely male audience, and there's no issue with that. But as we look through history, when you didn't have a diverse point of view or a female point of view on the team, so for example, car airbags is a great example from the past of when it came to understanding where to put them and how to place them in the car. It was very novel at the time, and people just, it was an all-male team that went to the weight and height tables of men, and they literally killed women and children until that got satisfied. So we've seen that in a lot of applications, a lot of apps that are tracking health, and it doesn't track the number one thing women track in their health was not included in the app on the first round. So we'll see differences. But my point more is, we knew that there would be a big displacement of human jobs when AI got more prevalent, as Lina was pointing out. The unfortunate thing that I'm seeing in corporate America right now is, because of COVID, everyone is reassessing how many workers they need. And they're saying, we don't need as many in the corporate office. I was talking to a physical storage company, and they said, we don't need any workers at all. You can rent the storage locker through a kiosk. Everyone wants a contact list. We need a few people in the back office, and we no longer need anyone at our sites. I was talking to the hotel, a big, huge hotel branch, and they said, we're now looking at middle management. We just don't need as many. So this human displacement of jobs from technology that was accelerated through COVID is really going to really make the digital divide even bigger. So that's the societal issue I think those of us in tech need to think about, especially we're talking about, okay, we'll move jobs to people, and 5G enables that. The dirty secret on 5G is it's not going to be in the rural areas, not in the short term, and maybe not ever, because the cost is so high to put it there, and that's a huge barrier. So I think that one of the good things to come from COVID is that, I don't know who you believe in, but God put us in a timeout around the world, and we've been able to see the digital divide up front and close. And I'm hoping that a lot of the tech leaders take leadership to not only take the leading edge people that are going to be the early adopters, but also try to bridge the digital divide.
Mm-hmm.
Are you back, Hind? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry, it's funny. I'm in San Francisco, but it seems I have Lebanese internet. It must be this panel. I will say, Nora, the happy coincidence of this panel is that we're all women. George, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this was intentionally planned. I think LebNet was really trying to seek technology leaders. And so I'm hoping this panel confirms that the trend is changing. Before we open it up for question, Lina, do you have additional thoughts? I'd love to hear more from you. I know you've touched on brain drain and the human experience. Are there more challenges for
Yes,
us?
what I'm saying, I want to, I agree with the things that were said, and I want to add to that. For example, we talked about AI ethics, but there is also AI bias, and we talked about the gender here, and the AI bias now, because of the data being biased in a certain way, AI, it has a lot of bias, and they're trying to correct that, however, by making the AI unbiased. However, do we want to do this? Because the AI bias shows us the issues in the society. If we correct it, we're hiding these issues. It's not reflecting the truth. the true society. You know what I mean? When the AI is biased, we know we have issues. So fix the society rather than fixing the AI. That's one thing I want first. Another thing that's very important is interpretable AI, especially for health and also for automated mobility and self-driving cars. For example, if you have an accident and something happens, now things are black box, and because of IP and others, people don't want to, have it explain their technology. But we want more AI that is more interpretable. And sometimes we don't understand what's happening with AI because it's very heuristic. Sometimes people develop these systems and train them from data. So it's very important to have interpretability, because if something happens, you want to know it happened because of what. So now the police would come, would say that self-driving car did not behave the way it did and maybe hit a pedestrian. What happened? What went wrong? What, because you have a lot of manufacturer with different pieces in that car. You want to know. So it's like the forensics behind these self-driving cars. This requires interpretability. Same thing for health. When a diagnosis goes wrong, you have liability. So in applications where you have liability, it's very important to have AI that is interpretable, explainable. So we do have to work on that also. Another thing, because we talked about digital identity, is privacy. So how to have more privacy and protect people from that, their identity being abused in a certain way, or their privacy being also abused in a certain way with a lot of data out there. So these are all challenges. And talking about working remotely, I'm going to end with that. I'd love to be able to walk around. Before, when I used to teach, I'm walking around the classroom. Now I have doing it online. I have to be sitting. And also here we have the panel. After a panel, usually you intermingle with the crowd and you're standing. So we need these environments that allow us to walk and be talking while being tracked and allowing these interconnections. Now we're sitting more when we're doing all these meetings.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's that might be a common universal truth for all of us. Maybe the only one, I'm not sure. Thank you so much for sharing. George, I think we can open it up for questions. Do you want to jump in?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. We have a question from Frame Akiki. I don't know about that last name, family name. It's a weird last name. Frame is asking actually, what unique perspectives do you think women bring to technology and the impact to society? And I think Nora had started answering that in a way. Does anybody want to take a shot at continuing and to answer this?
Well, I could try. Hi, Fran. Thanks for the question. Great to hear from you. So I just think it's this whole different perspectives make for better outcomes. So the examples that Nora gave were fantastic examples of where, because it wasn't a very diverse group of brains and perspectives putting together the technology solution, they left out a whole half of society, right? They just didn't have that experience, and they weren't able to bring that experience into the development of the solution. So I think it's really important that women participate as much as men, right? As much as the increased diversity of global organizations, the more diversity you have, and you do it in an inclusive type manner, I think you get a better outcome, the best ideas. So it's funny, like you said, it's you have to create an environment where many participants, many perspectives are an input to the value creation, such that the solution is a better output. And so for women have a unique perspective. I was once in front of actually a group of Qualcomm engineers, and they were talking about saying, oh, they're having these groups to figure out what the woman needs to be more inclusive at Qualcomm. And I was laughing, and I said, it's great that you're holding all these sessions and all these things to try and figure out what the woman needs. My advice would be, I've been married 31 years, and my husband still hasn't figured me out. So rather than try to figure me out, why don't you just create an environment that's good for everybody. Like, good for you, good for me, good for all humans, and then I'll vote or I'll weigh in on that. But when you try to figure me out, yeah, you might miss, and I might miss. Just be inclusive.
Great
There's
answer.
that says the org chart doesn't lie. So it's a good reminder. Sorry, George.
No, that's a good point, actually. Org charts don't lie.
Yeah.
Janine Akiki also is asking a question about with Lebanon going through tough times, what aspect of technology is most important to help now and in the future? Does anybody want to take that question?
The power grid.
I would like to contribute to that. So I mean, the whole technology gap that happened in Lebanon because of whatever we went through happened before in Africa and in other countries where you miss like 5 or 6 years of technology innovations. But there is also an upside to that, is that now that you can join, you can do a technology leap and you can adopt a latest technology. So yes, in the realm of, for example, you know, our IDs in Lebanon, our passports and all those documents, and there is always these RFPs going on about, you know, this new ID and this new paper and this new certification process. Yes, all of this can be digitized. All of this can be done in a very efficient way. And we're happy to contribute in any effort that would contribute to bringing the country to immediately to the next wave of technology and skipping maybe the last 10 and adopting the latest ones. So in the realm alone of organizing the population and digital identity, there is so much that we can offer on that aspect. We're happy to contribute it even, but then we just need, you know, the opportunity to make it happen, you know, just the will and the opportunity to make Lebanon jump and, you know, catch and adopt the next wave.
Lina, I'd also love to hear your perspective, given you are there and you are catering for the next gen.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the most important things now to help Lebanon is to help create jobs and help that we develop here the technology and contribute. Because Lebanon is really good at adopting technologies. We have that really. I have very fast internet here, faster than the US for some reason. I don't know how this happens, but people are providing different communities. But what is needed for the economy here is we are the hub for innovation here. And for that to happen, we need more people to invest in Lebanon because we have really incredible talent here, but they have to be given the opportunity that we start new companies here or branches and things. And now, especially that we're able to work remotely, that we can give this generation the chance to contribute. And you can be amazed by what they could do. That's one thing. Another important thing to help Lebanon is the energy here problem, renewable energy, to be able, because the deficit here, half of the deficit, the GDP is due to energy because we're using all the equipment. And so to help empower the people to also pollution and stuff, to use renewable energy and to provide solution to that at a cost-effective way. And we have all the politics behind it. So this would help to have sustainable technologies and development from recycling to energy to water. This is needed in Lebanon also. And workforce retraining to allow different people to work and to have jobs.
Nora, is there something you wanted to add? I know you wanted to jump in first.
No, you know, I think I was thinking about the energy and Lina covered it well, but I was just thinking of the spirit of the Lebanese people. If there was just a structure around it, they are the most resourceful, they have the skill and they have the will. And so I think we don't want to see other countries come in and say, hey, let us do this for you. But we just need some structure with money, as well as maybe some mentorship from those ahead of them in the process of startups, et cetera. And the Lebanese people are one of the most resourceful people on the planet. Unfortunately, we just keep getting disrupted by I won't go through the litany of disruption we've had, but the Lebanese people are the most resilient and resourceful. And with those things we talked about, there's no limit to the ingenuity. It is not a country lacking ingenuity.
I just want to I forgot something very important, accountability. If we have a way to measure accountability, and this can be done through data. I mean, if you have something that you monitor areas, remote sensing, even from to see what's happening, what kind of services are lacking here and so forth. And you can monitor and take an informed decision and also know what's happening, what's being stored here and there. So you map that and people are held accountable through this part of monitoring and surveillance and data. That would be really nice and can change how things are done here and can reduce corruption.
Great, thank you. Nora, I know you indicated that you would like to answer the next one. I'll read it. It's from Walid Bishara. He said, I would like the panel to share their thoughts on how those emerging technologies that you've talked about will impact small businesses, especially those in the tech field, where we are one of those small businesses and work in the line of business applications. Will there be still a role for us in, or is it that the big guys are going to play and the consumers are going to pay?
No, I think, it obviously depends on what your small business does. So I'm not sure quite exactly, but I think the movement to the cloud, the movement to edge, the movement to the smarter devices really enable a small business to act like they're a large business. So for example, one area we've already seen, outsourcing was just a big business deal. We could do labor arbitrage, get people in different countries to help us as a large business. But then you saw O-Works and things where we could hire somebody. I hired somebody in Spain to help me with a TED Talk. And so it was wonderful collaboration, being a small office, home office, being able to do outsourced work somewhere else. So we will see more tools. The key for any of the businesses, big and small, is disruption happens constantly. It's going to happen more, it's going to happen faster, and always in making sure you have that unique value proposition and never, ever, ever thinking you can't get disrupted. And I think that holds true whether you're big or small. As the big guys start going down, the small businesses have to continually differentiate. So hopefully that touched on it. If there was a specific business in mind, let me know.
Great. Next question is from Gerard Rafia. It's for anybody who wants to take it. Basically, the question is, remote working, Zoom or other will increase productivity, but we will start seeing a decrease in creativity. No more whiteboarding, coffee breaks, and aha moments, basically. So is this what you are seeing? Mary, you might want to answer.
Yeah, actually, at Qualcomm, we are very sensitive to this metric because we take a lot of pride in our DNA as being innovators. And we actually have seen the filing for patents increase since we've been on COVID. So it's not stopping the ability for the creativity to happen. People are finding a way to engage and finding a way to fuel that creative spirit, even in these interesting circumstances. But you'll see more tricks coming out. I mean, the whiteboarding, we're piloting something right now to try and figure out how to make it more accessible, the whiteboard feature, make it more usable. But again, we've been measuring this because for Qualcomm, it was very important to understand whether that IP muscle was impacted through COVID-19. And in fact, we found the opposite. We found that we've been filing more since being on COVID-19.
Great, thank you. So let's go quickly through the, I'd like to cover all the questions, but we don't want to take too much time. So the next question actually is from Joe Wehby to Dr. Lina. He's saying that his startup won the MIT Lebanon Hackathon in June on the basis of solving this problem of workforce development for remote AI teams. They're based in North America, and they want to bring we want to bring Lebanon into the AI ecosystem. So how can we partner with companies, hospitals, or banks in Lebanon to open source their data and show them the business value of AI? You might want to take that offline in detail, but of course you can just maybe cover it a bit at a high level right now.
You know, one thing I want to say, I mean, we do have our medical school and hospitals at LAU, at the Lebanese American Universities. Our dean of the medical school is the president-elect. He's going to be the next president in October. Why I'm saying that? Because he's into AI and health. He want to push AI and health. That said, I had, you know, so the doctors here, which is very interesting, are very keen to work with engineers, at least in the hospitals we have, which is, and they want to help and they want to work on AI and innovation. So they're open to do that. And although they're very busy, I see they want to help and innovate here, and they have more time. I feel that they want to give, although they're busy more than the US. In the US, for example, you hardly can find the time for a radiologist to sit with you and give you. Here, last week, I met with 5 radiologists, and they want to work with us on AI. So I'd be happy to take this offline. And this is something we want to push here, especially if you're interested in health. And you know, health data is very hard to find. So we could do something here in pushing along this front, especially with the resources we have.
And Joe had another question that maybe also he can take offline with you. If he doesn't have your contact, I can definitely provide it to him.
Thank you.
Rania Afuni asks a question, and it's to Fadwa, and they know each other. I will tell you that, about digital identity. What is the latest on the prevention and detection of digital identity fraud? Now with AI advances, we have deep fakes in videos where it's possible to superimpose the video of one person on another's, let alone images and 3D images too. Digitally forging someone's identity, including biometrics, is technically feasible. How can we build trust in this technology and therefore adoption?
Sure. Yes, hello Rania. Rania was my colleague at AUB. We studied CCE together, so it's always a pleasure to see her anywhere. Okay, so deep identity, digital identity frauds, and all what you're explaining will always happen. So I'll just be blunt about it. So yes, there will always be forgery. There will always be all of those things. The forte, or what SSI is bringing, is so many level of truth, like, you know, the rechecking of the verifiable credentials. And the reason we call them verifiable credential is that we are giving you the mean to verify that whatever credential the holder shares with the verifier, there will always be so many independent layers where the verifier can go and check the digital signatures of those credentials. So yes, you can fake. However, there would be a lot of alerts around. All the other servers, all the other PCs will be pointing out that there has been a data change, and there has been tampering with the data. So a lot of what you're saying is something we're working on every day, especially regarding biometrics. So it's still a big issue, and legislation and all of those things, and whether biometrics are allowed to be used at all, and all what Dr. Lina spoke about, and all what Nora and Mary, all of these things we are debating them as we speak. Especially they become 100 times more sensitive when it comes to digital identity. But yes, we are working on each one of those things that you mentioned has a countermeasure that we are working on today. So a lot is happening on fraud level, but a lot is also happening on making sure it doesn't pass. I'll also be happy to connect with you and, you know, explain more about that later.
I just want to mention I'm a CCE too, but I'm before you probably. Definitely I'm before you. So we have 2 CCE people here from AUB, like undergrad. So.
And probably a lot more in attendance too. So good. So I'm gonna cover the last question actually by Jabran Jahshan at NVIDIA. He asked a question about ethics in AI. How do you draw a line between designing with traceability and discipline and allowing innovation to take risk and be affordable? A car designer has to document and trace everything should anything go wrong. If intent is punishment, it will kill innovation. Who wants to take that?
I can take it, I guess, if because we worked on this. I worked on a big initiative on automated mobility in Arizona, and part of this we have the law school and the lawyers working with us. And specifically, one question was ethics and what you're saying, the punishment and being punished. And according to the lawyers who were working with us, they suggested it's like the vaccine. When the first time they come up with vaccine. The vaccine has pros and cons, and it has, so anything, if something happened, they were used to be penalized, the pharmaceutical company or whoever is developing the vaccine, but it went, then they couldn't, and they were charged a lot of money. So what they did, they got together and they had this lump pool of money, and they come up with legislation that protect them and from that, for the vaccine, so that to operate. So what they suggested, one thing that can protect you is standardization too. So if you have something in the standards, they say this is the minimum requirement that you should satisfy, that can protect you. So standardization is key for that, and coming up with a policy where people go, to convince the government to come up with something that, the technology company are not liable, and there is some pool of money put aside to address anything collectively. That's one answer, if anybody wants to.
This was good. Anybody wants to add anything to it?
I think if we just look at the history of when technology comes out, typically we have to have a use case first. And so as Dr. Lina was saying, oh my God, we have vaccines, and then there was a problem, and the use case was we were getting sued. So it's really hard to figure out if you're making graphics cards or you're in some of the technologies we work on, what are the unintended consequences? We think we know what they are, but until they get into the real world, and then we just go case by case, and legislation ultimately comes in. So at the end of the day, we make tools, and then people make decisions on how to use them, and then we get legislation of how can we rein that in. So I think your company is protected by liability insurance and those kind of things. So if you're a designer, you want to make the best tool possible, but just like every other tool, the legislation will catch up with it eventually.
Great. Hind, back to you. How you want to close it?
Yeah, I mean, how to close. This was such a rich panel. We could talk for hours about this. Thank you so much for taking the time. This was extremely interesting, engaging. It seems that our worlds will be completely disrupted in the next 10 years. So looking forward to that shared common experience together. Thanks everyone for attending. I guess that's it.
Thank you for hosting
you.
and doing good.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.